Oh, you're lucky. Well, can they do it? Will their fans forgive them? Millie Vanilli is dead, but Rob and Fab want to revive their music career.
Everyone thought they knew the Milli Vanilli story. Two guys lip-synced to other people's voices, got caught, and lost their Grammy.
If you don't lip-sync right, it's like oil on a fire. So we were like...
But in 2024, producer Frank Farian finally told the whole truth before he died. What he revealed wasn't just about fake singing. It was about a machine that used real artists as ghost voices while fake ones got fame.
Milli Vanilli.
Everybody's faking.
The industry knew, the labels knew, and the shocking part? This wasn't Farian's first time. He'd been doing this for decades, and nobody stopped him until it was too late. He was born as Franz Reuther on July 18, 1941, in a small German town called Köln, right when World War II was turning darker. Bombs were falling, cities were burning, and all of Germany was caught in chaos. Köln wasn't spared. It echoed with sirens, shaking walls, and hunger. That was the world Franz came into, a place where no one felt safe and nothing felt stable. Children born in that time grew up watching buildings collapse and mothers cry, and they learned early that control was everything. For someone like Franz, who never met his father because he died in the war before Franz was even born, that feeling of helplessness stayed buried deep. His mother raised 3 children alone, struggling to survive in a Germany left in ruins. There were no proper schools, no comfort, no guiding hand. Franz never heard his father's voice. He didn't even have memories to hold on to. Just silence. That kind of absence didn't just leave a hole, it rewired how he saw the world. He learned not to rely on others. He watched people carefully, and he started to believe that if he wanted things done right, he had to take control himself, not just of his life, but of everything around him. In those gray years after the war ended, between 1945 and 1955, Germany was rebuilding, brick by broken brick. There wasn't much joy. People were ashamed, broken, and poor. But there was one strange beam of light: music. American forces brought in jazz and rock and roll, and to a young boy who had only known air raid shelters and soup lines, this music felt like magic. It was louder than hunger. It was stronger than fear. It didn't just entertain him, it transported him. It made him feel something other than pain, and that feeling stuck. He didn't want to be a musician to express something real. He wanted to recreate that same escape for others. He saw music as a weapon, a tool, something that could be used to control emotions, just like it once rescued his. By 16, Franz was already tired of being Franz. That name reminded him too much of who he'd been forced to be. So he changed it. He became Frank Farian. It wasn't random. Frank felt international, less German, more marketable. Farian sounded mysterious. He didn't just want to make music. He wanted to create illusions. And the first illusion was himself. The world didn't need to know who he really was. They just needed to believe what he presented. This idea that it's better to be believed than to be real became the rule he would follow for the rest of his life. Even in school, that instinct kicked in. He made up a band. It didn't exist. He created names, roles, stories, just to impress girls. And it worked. His classmates believed him. He used nothing but confidence and fiction to gain admiration. He realized then that people didn't care if it was true. They cared if it looked and sounded good. He didn't need talent. He needed theater. And the more they believed, the more powerful he felt. In the 1960s, he tried to be a real artist. He trained as a cook first, but music pulled him harder. He released songs under the name Frankie Boys Schatten. His first single, Shouting Ghost, came out in 1964 and crashed completely. Then came Yakety Yak in 1964, Under the Boardwalk in 1965, Mr. Pitiful in 1967. All failures. No one cared. The doors stayed shut. He wasn't the face people wanted. Even when his voice worked, his looks didn't fit the genre. That rejection wasn't just painful, it taught him something cruel and useful. Image mattered more than sound. And if he couldn't be the star, he'd find a way to control the ones who could. By the late 60s and early 70s, he was doing session work. That meant background vocals, playing for others, getting no credit, watching less talented people become stars just because they looked the part. He released more songs: Ein Kissen voller Träume in 1969, Speedy Jack in 1970, Du bist wunderbar in 1971. Still nothing. Rejection was everywhere. But he didn't give up. He got smarter and colder. Then came the moment everything changed. In 1975, he recorded Baby Do You Wanna Bump. He did the vocals himself. But when it was time to perform it live, he knew he couldn't pull it off alone. The harmonies were too complex, so he came up with a trick. He put together a group called Boney M 4 Faces. 2 of them would sing live. The other 2, including a dancer named Bobby Farrell, would just move their lips. No one needed to know the truth. The deception worked better than he ever imagined. Daddy Cool exploded in 1976. By 1978, Rivers of Babylon and Ma Baker became global hits. He had found the formula, but his biggest solo success came quietly. A German cover of Rocky in 1976 hit #1 and stayed there for 4 weeks. It should have been his proudest moment. But it wasn't, because by then, he had already tasted something better than fame: control. He started mastering vocal tricks in the early 70s. Using tapes, he could change his own voice, make it deeper, stronger, more soulful. And he used these tricks to create fake voices for the groups he assembled. The male voice you heard in Boney M songs, that was Frank, not Bobby Farrell. Bobby danced. Bobby looked cool, but he never sang a note. And no one knew. Fans screamed for a voice that came from someone else entirely. Frank sat behind the scenes, collecting the money and pulling the strings. Only the female singers, Liz Mitchell and Marcia Barrett, actually sang. The rest was illusion. Every performance, every hit, was a carefully managed lie, and it sold over 100 million records. The world cheered while Frank stayed hidden, richer and more powerful every year. Bobby Farrell, the face of the group, was never given creative control. No songwriting, no royalties. He was picked for his looks, not his voice. Frank wanted someone exotic for European audiences, and Bobby's Caribbean roots made him perfect for the part. But he was just an actor in Frank's show. Everything, the music, the lyrics, the production, came from one man. Farrell got a flat wage. Frank kept the profits. It was 1988 in Munich, and Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan were broke, hungry, and invisible to the music industry. They were living in a housing project, stealing food just to survive. But one night in a nightclub, a man saw them and didn't just see 2 dancers, he saw dollar signs. That man was Frank Farian. He didn't care that they weren't singers. He didn't even ask. All he noticed were their faces, their bodies, their movements. They were beautiful, different, magnetic, exactly what MTV wanted. Farian had already pulled this trick once before. In the 1970s, he created Boney M, where one of the dancers lip-synced to Farian's own voice for more than 2 decades. Now he was going to do it again, only bigger. When he approached Rob and Fab, he promised them everything. He offered each of them $4,000 and a dream. They'd get royalties too, he said. They'd be stars. And one day, he swore, they'd sing their own songs. But the contracts were in German. Morvan didn't fully understand them. Neither of them understood they had just signed away their voices. Behind the scenes, Farian built a hidden machine. He secretly assembled a team of real singers: John Davis, Brad Howell, Charles Shaw, and the Rocco sisters. They recorded everything in silence, never allowed to meet Rob and Fab. Davis had served in the U.S. Army and stayed in Germany to sing. Howell, the only one in a union, got residuals while the others received flat fees. Shaw was paid $6,000 just to do the rap on Girl You Know It's True. But as the fame grew, Shaw couldn't live with the lie. In December 1989, he told a reporter the truth. Farian panicked. He paid Shaw $150,000 to shut up. Then he fired him and replaced him with Davis. Farian's studio was like a bunker. The real singers worked upstairs. Rob and Fab were kept downstairs near the pool. Sometimes they were brought up for brief fake sessions, just long enough for show. The entire setup was built to keep them in the dark. Linda Rocco remembered how they rushed to record just 4 songs at first. But when Arista Records got involved, everything exploded. A full album was made without Rob and Fab singing a single note. Yet their names were on it. The album sold 6 million copies. It gave birth to 3 #1 hits. The world believed it was their voices. Rob and Fab didn't. They kept asking Farian to let them sing. He kept saying no. Still, they clung to hope. They thought maybe on the next tour, maybe on the next album. But instead, Farian put them in spandex and boots, braided their hair, and sent them lip-syncing across Europe. They were everywhere. Spain, France, Italy. By March 1989, when the album launched in the US, they were trapped in a lie worth millions. But they had no control, no voice, no power. What made it even worse was that Arista Records likely knew. According to their former manager, executives like Clive Davis were told everything 6 months before the Grammy. Rob and Fab even claimed they personally told Davis and others that they hadn't sung. Ken Levy, who worked in creative services at Arista, admitted that everyone felt awkward when the duo won Best New Artist in February 1990. But when the truth came out that November, the label pretended to know nothing. Roy Lott said no one could have possibly known. It was a corporate lie stacked on top of a personal one. The psychological damage was crushing. Rob and Fab were treated like stars in public, but lived in fear every day. They begged Farian to let them sing. He refused. They were terrified of being found out. Fab later said the fear never left. Rob said it felt like a sword was hanging over them. The pressure finally broke during a live performance on July 21, 1989, when the backing track skipped. Girl, you know it's... Girl, you know it's... It looped. Rob froze. He ran off stage. That moment, on Club MTV, was the beginning of the end. But Farian didn't stop the show. He forced them to keep going for another 15 months. By November 1990, Rob and Fab had had enough. They kept pushing to sing. Farian didn't just say no, he fired them. Their careers collapsed instantly. They had gone from hungry dancers to global pop stars and back to nothing. Rob once said, "We lived in a project. We had no money. We wanted to be stars." But the system used that dream against them. On February 22, 1990, something unbelievable happened. Millie Vanilli walked up to the stage at the Grammy Awards and accepted the trophy for Best New Artist. The entire room applauded them for an album they never even sang on. That album, Girl You Know It's True, had sold over 14 million copies across the world. It had 5 singles that stormed the top 5 charts and racked up $8 million in sales just on their own. More than $50 million had been made from it. They were chosen over real talents like Nene Cherry and Soul to Soul. But the truth was dark. Their producer, Frank Farian, knew they hadn't sung a single note. And the Grammy committee didn't even check. They just trusted the album credits. That's how Millie Vanilli became the first and only act in Grammy history to have their award taken away. It happened on November 19, 1990. Just 9 months after their biggest night, it all came crashing down. The cracks had started long before. In 1989, during a concert in Milwaukee with 22,000 fans, the truth began to slip out. Their recorded vocals suddenly stopped. Rob Pilatus stood there with the mic ready to sing, but no sound came. He panicked. He ran off stage, hit the tour manager, and locked himself inside the bus. Later, he told MTV, "I wanted to die." He said he couldn't fake it again. He couldn't take the lies. "I feel like a mosquito being squeezed," he told the LA Times. "The last 2 years of our lives have been a nightmare." Both Rob and Fab were now begging to sing for real on their next album. They couldn't keep pretending, but that demand would be the end of everything. A year earlier, on August 30th, 1989, a fancy dinner took place at the top of the World Trade Center in New York. It was 107 floors up, at a restaurant called Windows on the World. Arista Records executives sat around a table with Rob, Fab, and Farian. They were worried. Every time Rob spoke with his thick German accent or Fab with his French one, reporters grew suspicious. No way these guys sang that, they thought. Clive Davis, the Arista president, even suggested hiring a dialect coach. That's how fake the whole image was. They needed them to sound American, just to keep the act going. Farian didn't care about who they were. He believed their accents alone could ruin the entire illusion. So Arista paid for speech coaches to travel with them on tour. Everyone at that table knew the truth was dangerous. Behind the scenes, things got even uglier. That same dinner wasn't just about coaching voices. According to their former manager, Todd Headley, it was crisis control. If Arista hadn't already known the guys weren't the real singers, they definitely realized it that night. From then on, meetings were held in secret. They signed confidentiality deals. They prepared for the worst. Farian flew in and out of Los Angeles for hush-hush talks with big execs. As the rumors spread through 1989 and early 1990, they were all focused on one goal: keep the money flowing and the truth buried. But Rob and Fab had reached their limit. After they won the Grammy, they demanded to sing. When Arista and Farian said no, the duo pushed harder. They found out they were locked into a contract for multiple albums. They couldn't escape it. Feeling trapped, they made a dangerous move. They told Farian to pay them $150,000, or they'd go on live German TV and reveal everything. It was a last resort. They knew exposing the lie would destroy them, but they were willing to take Farian down too. The plan worked for a moment. Farian paid. But now he knew he'd lost control. So just 5 days later, on November 14, 1990, Farian made his move. He flew to New York and held a press conference. He didn't wait to be exposed. He exposed them first. He told the world he had fired Rob and Fab. He said they weren't the real voices behind the songs. He named the real singers: Brad Howell, John Davis, and Charles Shaw. Then he framed himself as the mastermind who had only done what was necessary. He said, the look was good, the music was good, millions of fans bought it, so who could blame him? He acted like the brave one, like a misunderstood genius. He protected himself and threw Rob and Fab into the fire. Within days, Rob and Fab were dropped by Arista Records. Their album was wiped from stores, even though it had sold millions. The Grammys took back their award on November 19, 1990, just 5 days after Farian's confession. This had never happened in Grammy history, and while Rob and Fab were destroyed, the men in suits were untouched. People like Clive Davis stayed in power. Sandy Gallin kept his reputation. The media turned on Rob and Fab completely. They were mocked as liars and cheats. But nobody talked about the record labels, the managers, the executives who built and protected the fraud. They were the real architects, and they all walked away clean. Fans were furious. The first lawsuit came just 3 days after the confession, on November 22, 1990. A woman from Ohio sued for her money back. Over 1,000 others in her state had also bought the album. More lawsuits came fast. Some used consumer fraud laws. Some accused Arista of racketeering. The country's biggest class action lawyers jumped in. There was a proposed settlement in Chicago on August 12, 1991, but it was rejected because it only offered credits for more Arista music. Finally, on August 28, 1991, a real settlement was approved. Fans who had bought the album or concert tickets could get refunds. 10 million people were eligible. They were allowed to keep the album, but still get their money back. The deadline to claim was March 8, 1992. When Frank Farian finally exposed Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan in November of 1990, he didn't pause for a second. The scandal that should have ended his career became just another opportunity. He quickly pushed two new faces into the spotlight, John Davis and Brad Howell, the real singers behind Millie Vanilli's biggest hits. He gave them a new name, The Real Millie Vanilli, and in 1991 dropped an album called The Moment of Truth. It wasn't just a title. It was a mocking slap in the face to the very people he had used and discarded. The album had 3 singles, and one of them, Keep On Running, even hit number 4 in Germany. But the whole project never reached the United States. The world had seen the mask come off. Farian had built an empire on lies and now tried to profit from the same story again, this time just showing the faces he had once buried. While Rob and Fab were being humiliated in every headline and late-night joke, Farian stayed hidden behind his new machine. He made money twice, first by pretending the frontmen were real, then by admitting they weren't. Rob couldn't take it. On November 30th, 1991, just 1 year after their world collapsed, he tried to end everything. He was at the Mondrian Hotel in West Hollywood. He drank a fifth of bourbon, swallowed 60 tranquilizers, cut his wrist open, and climbed over the balcony railing of the 9th floor. But someone found him in time. The rescue was quick, but the damage was already done inside. By 1995, he was no longer just lost. He was dangerous. In December of that year, he attacked someone with a metal lamp. Just a few weeks later, in January of 1996, he vandalized a home in Beverly Glen, left over $1,000 in damage, and slapped the owner. Then, in February, he broke into a car and assaulted the man who caught him, only to get hit with a baseball bat himself. A judge ordered him into rehab, but when he ran away, a $60,000 warrant was issued. He kept threatening to kill people. His life had fallen off a cliff, and there was no guardrail anymore. Fab tried a different path. When the world walked away, he went inside. He said it felt like everyone disappeared. The phones stopped ringing. Friends went silent. He went into rehab too, but not just for the drugs. He knew he had to fix the part of him that was breaking. He picked up a guitar. He started writing. He learned how to produce his own music. Slowly, he built something new. He called it Love Revolution. But the wounds were deep. He remembered nights where he would just cry and didn't even know who to ask for help. He said people he trusted turned out to be users. They weren't friends. They were opportunists. The media didn't help. They made jokes about suicide. He said psychiatrists warned him about the edge, about how once you fall from fame, there's almost no way back. But he didn't give up. He spent years rebuilding, not just his career, but himself. And through it all, Farian never faced anything close to punishment. Rob and Fab were hit with 26 lawsuits in the US alone. They lost their Grammy. They lost their future. But Farian just kept working. He moved on to other acts, other projects. In the mid-90s, he was behind La Bouche and Le Click, churning out more Eurodance hits using the same formula. He had already produced Meat Loaf's Blind Before I Stop back in 1986, and he didn't stop there. Through the late 90s, He worked with a Latin pop group called No Mercy. In 1997, he helped produce Tick, Tick, Tack. While Rob's life collapsed and Fab fought just to survive, Farian kept making music and money. He never faced criminal charges. He never paid any major fines. He kept the rights to Millie Vanilli's recordings and earned royalties for decades. He played the game better than anyone else, and the industry let him. But Rob never recovered. In 1998, everything caught up to him. He died of an accidental drug overdose. The exact day wasn't made public, but what mattered was the finality of it. He had been trying to come back. He and Fab had started working on a new album together called Back and in Attack, but it was never released. Fab remembered the last time he saw Rob. It was on Sunset Strip in Los Angeles. Rob looked hollow, like the light had gone out. Fab said he could see it. His brother was gone, and there was no bringing him back. Rob never got the right kind of help. He used drugs to carry the confusion, to carry the guilt, to carry the weight of what had been done to him, and eventually, it crushed him. When the news of his death broke, Farian didn't offer sorrow. He didn't apologize. He didn't admit anything. He just stayed quiet and moved on again. Even over 30 years later, Farian still twisted the truth. He kept changing his story. Sometimes he said the record labels made him do it. Other times, he said Rob and Fab always knew. Sometimes he claimed it was all just temporary. He never gave one clear truth. He was always adjusting his answers depending on who was listening. In 2024, just before his death, he spoke with Matthias Schweighöfer, the actor playing him in a new biopic. When asked about the infamous press conference on November 14, 1990, Farian didn't show any regret. He said he was still angry. After all those years, he was still angry. Not sorry, not reflective, angry. Matthias said Farian was a control freak. He wouldn't answer honestly. He wouldn't even talk about Rob's death. Even at the end, he was deflecting, dodging, rewriting the past to protect himself. John Davis, one of the real voices behind the hits, died on May 24, 2021, of COVID-19 in Nuremberg, Germany. He was 66. He had lived his whole life in the shadows of a sound he created. He sang the songs, he carried the melodies, but no one knew his name. He was born in South Carolina, moved to Germany, and gave his voice to songs that sold over 30 million copies. When he died, the world barely noticed. His daughter posted a tribute online, asking for one last round of applause for the man who made so many people happy with his voice, his smile, and his spirit. But most people still didn't know who he was. His entire career had been buried under someone else's face. Even the music industry didn't want to remember. The record executives, the label heads, the insiders, all the people who helped push the lie, who knew or strongly suspected the truth, they said nothing. For decades, they stayed quiet. They let Rob and Fab take the fall. They let Farian take the money. The rest disappeared. Even with documentaries coming out in the 2020s, even with evidence that showed this wasn't just one man's fraud, but a full-scale industry operation, those people still denied, or claimed they didn't know. The ones with power were protected. The ones without it were sacrificed. Frank Farian died in January of 2024 in Miami. He was 82. His family confirmed the death on the 23rd. They said little, no confession, no apology, just silence. He had gotten a heart valve transplant in 2022. The biopic Girl, You Know It's True was coming out. His name was once again on screens and in papers. He had sold hundreds of millions of records during his life. But his legacy was forever linked to the pain he caused. Behind closed doors, some believe he may have said more. That in private conversations, he finally admitted he knew exactly what he had done to Rob and Fab.